What kind of man takes a second bride while his own wife is still alive? That question cut through Catherine Foster's heart, sharper than the rocks beneath her torn wedding dress, as she stumbled through the canyons of New Mexico territory. The wind stung her cheeks and carried dust into her eyes, but nothing hurt like the memory of what she had seen 6 hours earlier. She had watched her husband of 3 years, Thomas Bailey, stand at the same church where they once exchanged vows and marry someone else. The banker's daughter, the woman he thought would lift him higher in the town. Catherine had stood frozen at the back of the chapel, in the dress she had worn to meet him, the dress she had worn hoping to remind him of the promises he had once made. But Thomas never looked her way, not even once. He had acted as if she did not exist. Now blood stained the hem of her dress from stumbling over rocks and thorns as she moved deeper into the canyon. Tears blurred her sight, and her legs shook beneath her. She reached for the rough sandstone wall to steady herself. The desert wind whipped her honey-brown hair across her face. She wiped her eyes with trembling fingers. She had given Thomas her time, her trust, her whole life, and he had traded her for a rich man's daughter like she was nothing more than a pair of old shoes. "You're a long way from town, ma'am." The deep voice came from above. Catherine startled, her foot slipping on the rocks. She looked up and saw a man on horseback at the ridge, framed by the setting sun. Broad shoulders, weather-worn duster, a hat brim dipped low enough to shade most of his face. "I'm not going back," Catherine gasped. "Not ever." The man dismounted in one smooth motion and walked toward her. As he neared, Catherine saw he was younger than she expected, maybe 28, maybe 29. His blue eyes were sharp, almost cutting. A thick scar ran along his jawline, giving his face a hard, rugged edge. "Isaac Aldridge," he said, tipping his hat slightly. "And I'm not telling you to go back. Just saying these canyons aren't friendly to folks without water or a horse." He nodded at the canteen hanging from his saddle. Catherine swallowed hard. Her throat was raw from crying and dust, but she lifted her chin. "My husband took another bride today," she said, her voice cracking. Isaac studied her. "And you're still wearing your wedding dress?" "Because it wasn't my wedding," she said. The words tasted bitter. It was his, to her. Isaac's expression changed, not soft but clearer, like something inside him recognized the hurt in her voice. "Bold move," he said. "Foolish move," Catherine corrected. "Now I have nowhere to go." Isaac looked at her for a long moment, then turned toward the darkening sky. "My camp is over that ridge. You can rest there. Replace that water you've lost. Then figure out your next step." Catherine hesitated. Trusting a stranger out here meant gambling with her life. But staying alone meant certain danger. She took a slow breath. "I'm not in the habit of harming women," Isaac added, seeing the fear in her eyes. "Mrs. Foster." That name stabbed her heart. She forced the correction out. "Catherine Foster." Isaac nodded. "Well, Miss Foster, I give you my word you're safer with me tonight than out here after dark." She followed him over the ridge, walking beside his horse. The canyon glowed gold and purple under the setting sun. Catherine felt Isaac's eyes drift to her torn dress now and then. "What's your husband's name?" Isaac asked finally. "Thomas Bailey. He owns the Double B Ranch north of Silver Creek." Isaac stopped so suddenly his horse nearly bumped him. "Thomas Bailey," he repeated. His voice hardened. "Tall, scar above his right eye." Catherine blinked. "Yes, you know him?" Isaac's jaw tightened. "We've crossed paths." They walked again, Isaac's steps more rigid now. Catherine sensed something darker in him, something cold rising behind his eyes. "What's your business with my husband?" she asked quietly. "Ex-husband," Isaac corrected. "And let's just say he took something from me once. Something I can't get back." They reached his camp tucked between two large boulders. It was simple but steady. A fire pit, bedroll, supplies neatly stacked. "Your husband took another bride," Isaac said, helping her down the slope with surprising gentleness. "Then I'll take his greatest loss." Catherine froze. "What does that mean?" Isaac looked at her, firelight reflecting in his eyes. "It means fate works in strange ways, Miss Foster." He lit the fire while Catherine sat numbly on a flat rock. The flames flickered against his scar, making him look both dangerous and trustworthy at once. "How do you know Thomas?" she asked, when the silence felt too heavy. Isaac didn't look up. "We were partners once. Had a silver claim. Should have made us rich." The spark caught. Fire flared. But Thomas wanted it all. Woke up one morning with him pointing a gun at me. Catherine's breath caught. "He left me for dead in those mountains," Isaac said softly. "Took everything." She stared at the fire. Memories of Thomas's sudden wealth flashed through her mind, his vague stories, his empty promises, and for the first time she believed Isaac completely. "If what you say is true," Catherine whispered, "why help me?" Isaac finally looked up. "I saw you in that canyon, bleeding, alone, wearing a wedding dress in the middle of nowhere. No decent man would leave you there." The fire crackled between them as the sky deepened into night. Catherine felt something shift inside her. A slow, quiet strength, waking in the place where heartbreak had lived only hours before. "Then what do we do now?" she asked. Isaac poured her a tin cup of coffee and handed it to her. "Now," he said, his blue eyes steady on hers, "we find out what Thomas Bailey values most." Catherine wrapped her hands around the warm cup. "And then," Isaac's voice lowered, "then we take it." Morning broke slow and pale across the New Mexico sky. Catherine woke to the smell of coffee and the soft crackle of a dying fire. For a moment, she forgot where she was, until she saw Isaac crouched near the stream, filling the canteen. Her heart tightened. Everything that had happened rushed back. The wedding, the humiliation, the canyon, and the stranger who had saved her. Isaac returned with the canteen and handed it to her. "You slept hard," he said. "You needed it." Catherine touched the torn hem of her wedding dress. "I need a lot more than sleep." Isaac nodded. "Which is why we're going back to Silver Creek." Catherine nearly dropped the canteen. "No, I can't go back there. Everyone saw me. Everyone knows what happened." "That's why it works," Isaac said calmly. "No one expects you to return. Not this soon. Not with me." Catherine shook her head. "I have no friends there anymore." Thomas made sure of that. Isaac stood in front of her and crossed his arms. "All the more reason to take back what he stole. Your dignity, your choices, your life." His words cut deep, not in a painful way, but like truth carving a space that had been empty for far too long. "First," Isaac added, eyeing her dress, "we need to get you out of that." They rode double on his horse, Catherine holding tightly to him as they traveled toward a small homestead outside of town. He explained that an older widow lived there, Martha Jenkins, someone he could trust. Martha opened her door with sharp eyes that softened the second she saw Catherine's dress. "Come inside, dear," she said before Catherine could speak. "You look like the world's been unfair to you." Inside the small cabin, Martha helped Catherine into a blue calico dress, braided her hair, and handed her a carpet bag of essentials. Catherine felt human again. When she stepped outside, Isaac stared for a moment, not in a way that made her feel exposed, but in a way that made her feel seen. "Better," he said simply. They rode toward Silver Creek. Catherine's arms wrapped around Isaac's waist, her cheek brushing his back. It was improper, unthinkable, yet she didn't let go. "Why were you watching Thomas?" Catherine asked softly as they rode. "I wasn't watching him," Isaac replied. "I was watching you." She blinked. "Me?" "I was at the back of the church yesterday. I saw you walk in, saw you stand there in that wedding dress with the whole town staring. Then you disappeared. I went looking for you." Catherine's heart skipped. "Why?" Isaac hesitated. "Curiosity, and something else." She waited, but he didn't finish the thought. They arrived in town by mid-afternoon. Isaac took her to a boarding house where he had been staying. The widow who owned it didn't ask questions. Catherine stayed hidden in his room while Isaac slipped into town to gather news. When he returned, he brought supper and information. "Everyone's talking about you," he said. "Thomas claims you went mad with jealousy. Eliza Thornton is playing innocent. Says she hopes you find peace." Catherine's throat tightened, but it was Isaac's next words that made her hands shake. "Town gossip says Eliza is with child." The world tilted. Catherine steadied herself on the small table. "He never wanted children with me," she whispered. "Said it wasn't time, said we didn't have enough." Isaac's voice softened. "Catherine?" "No," she said, lifting her chin. "Let me feel it. Let me understand who he really was." Isaac moved close but didn't touch her. "I learned something else. Thomas is hosting a party at the ranch next weekend. Big gathering. Important people. Quote." Catherine felt her pulse quicken. "A perfect distraction." "That's what I was thinking," Isaac said. "If we want to take him down legally, we need evidence. The papers in his study. The ones he'd never let anyone see." Catherine nodded slowly. "I know where the safe is. I know the combination." Isaac leaned forward, his blue eyes sharp with purpose. "Then we use this party to ruin him, completely." Over the next days, they crafted a plan. Catherine reached out to her one remaining friend in town, Lucy Williams, who agreed to help her slip into the party disguised as her maid. Isaac took work at the ranch as a stable hand under a false name. By the night before the party, Catherine's nerves burned like fire beneath her skin. She sat on the bed twisting her hands while Isaac cleaned his revolver. "You don't have to do this," he said quietly. "Yes, I do," Catherine whispered. "If I don't face him now, I never will." Isaac set his revolver aside and crossed to her. He sat beside her, close enough she could feel the heat of him. "You're strong enough," he said. "Stronger than any woman I've ever met." Catherine surprised herself by leaning toward him, drawn like a moth to flame. Isaac's breath hitched, but he stood abruptly, breaking the moment. "We should rest," he said. "Tomorrow will test us both." But the space between them felt different now, charged, alive. The next afternoon, Catherine, dressed as Lucy's maid, walked into the Double B Ranch. The house glowed with lantern light. Music drifted from the parlor. Voices filled with gossip and laughter. Catherine kept her head down as she served drinks, moving through rooms she once lived in, through spaces she once cleaned, through memories she once believed were hers. Thomas and Eliza stood in the center of the room, glowing with lies. Catherine's hands trembled, but she kept her face hidden. When Howard Thornton made a toast, everyone turned toward him. This was her moment. She slipped into the hallway, then into the study. The lock clicked open under her hairpin. She moved to the painting, swung it aside, and turned the combination. The safe opened. She snatched every paper that mattered. Then the study door slammed behind her. "What the hell do you think you're doing?" Thomas stood there, fury in his face. She froze, then slowly looked up. "Hello, Thomas." Before he could react, the door burst open again. Isaac stood there, revolver raised. "She asked you to let her go," Isaac said, voice calm and deadly. "Now take your hands off the lady." Everything changed in that moment. Everything they planned. And everything they didn't. Thomas Bailey froze with his hand still clamped around Catherine's wrist. Isaac's revolver was steady, his jaw set like stone. For a moment, no one in the study breathed. "You're supposed to be dead," Thomas said, voice shaking. "Sorry to disappoint," Isaac replied. "Let her go." Thomas released Catherine instantly, stepping back as though Isaac's voice alone burned him. Catherine moved to Isaac's side, her heartbeat loud in her ears. "You planned this," Thomas spat. "You and what? My bitter ex-wife?" Catherine lifted her chin. "You made me bitter, Thomas. You made both of us something we never planned to be." Thomas sneered. "You always were dramatic. And you always were a liar," Catherine said. "A thief. And now the truth is finally in my hands." Isaac stepped closer. "Sit down." Thomas hesitated. "I said sit." Isaac's voice was low but dangerous. Thomas sat. The fire crackled in the corner, and the noise of the party drifted faintly through the walls. Catherine stood strong, her fingers steady now as she held the bag of stolen papers. Isaac placed a blank sheet of paper and a pen on the desk. "You're going to write a confession," Isaac said. "Everything we both know you did." Thomas laughed bitterly. "And if I don't?" Catherine pulled a document from her apron. "Because I found your secret, Thomas. You mortgaged this ranch to Eliza's father for almost nothing. You lied to him. You're nearly bankrupt." Thomas went still, fear flickering across his face. "You wouldn't dare show him that," Thomas whispered. Catherine leaned closer. "Try me." For the first time, Thomas Bailey looked afraid of her. He picked up the pen. His signature dragged across the page like a dying man's breath. When he finished, Isaac folded the confession and tucked it into his coat. "One more thing," Isaac said. "You're gonna walk us outside. Calm as anything. Tell anyone who sees us that you were showing old friends around." Thomas swallowed hard. "And if I don't?" Catherine held up the deed. "The sheriff. And Howard Thornton. They'll hear every detail." Thomas stood with clenched fists. "You'll regret this." "No," Catherine said quietly. "You regret losing control. We regret nothing." Isaac nudged Thomas toward the door. They moved through the kitchen, past startled servants onto the porch. Night air hit Catherine's face like freedom. 2 horses waited near the barn. "You won't get far," Thomas muttered. "We already have," Isaac said. They mounted. Catherine looked at Thomas one last time. Once, she had loved him, trusted him, built her life around him. Now he looked like a stranger wearing a familiar face. "Goodbye, Thomas," she said. They rode into the dark. The wind swallowed Thomas's curses behind them. They didn't slow down until the ranch lights disappeared completely. They reached a quiet stream miles from town and made camp. Catherine slid from the saddle, her legs trembling with the weight of everything that had happened. Isaac tied the horses and returned to her. "We did it." Catherine let out a breath she felt she had been holding for years. "I never thought I could face him again." "You faced him stronger than anyone I've ever seen," Isaac said. The fire cracked gently as they sat beside it. The night was cool, the stream a soft whisper in the distance. "What happens now?" Catherine asked. Isaac looked at her with a tenderness she had not expected. "That depends on you." Catherine felt her heartbeat stumble. "Me? You have money now, a piece of the ranch, a future that's yours again. You could go east, like you said, teach again, start fresh." "And you?" she asked softly. Isaac hesitated. "I thought about Colorado, new land, new cattle. A clean start." Catherine stared into the fire. The idea of the East felt cold and far away. The idea of leaving Isaac felt worse. "Unless," Isaac added, voice quieter, "I had a reason to stay." Catherine looked up. His blue eyes held something she hadn't expected. Hope. Her voice shook, but not from fear. "I think I've had enough of the East. I'd like to stay where the sky feels wide." Isaac's breath caught, his eyes searching hers. Slowly he reached out and took her hands. "Catherine," he whispered. He leaned in, giving her every chance to pull away. She didn't. Their lips met, soft at first, then deeper, fuller, as months of hurt melted into something warm and real. When they finally broke apart, Catherine rested her forehead against his. "I didn't think I could feel this again," she said. "You deserve love," Isaac whispered. "Not chains." She closed her eyes. "I want a life with someone who sees me, someone who chooses me." Isaac cupped her cheek. "I'm choosing you." She let the words settle inside her like dawn light. "And I'm choosing you," Catherine breathed. Months later, Catherine stood on the porch of a small ranch house nestled against the New Mexico sky. The Double K Ranch, named for Catherine and Isaac, was beginning to grow. Cattle grazed in the distance. The barn stood half-finished but sturdy. Hoofbeats approached, and Isaac rode up the hill with a grin that always softened her heart. "Any news?" she called. "Thomas and Eliza left the territory," Isaac said. "Seems Howard Thornton found out the truth. They're in California now. Starting over without his money." Catherine exhaled. "I hope he learns something from it." Isaac dismounted and walked to her, brushing a strand of hair from her cheek. "I bought a piece of the old ranch, the part you used to love, with the creek. Thought you might want it back." Her eyes widened. "Isaac!" "Happy 3-month anniversary," he said. Catherine laughed softly and kissed him. Then she took his hand and placed it over her stomach. "We're going to need more room soon." Isaac's eyes widened. "Catherine, are you?" She nodded, tears of joy filling her eyes. "We're having a baby." Quote, He let out a joyful shout and lifted her in his arms before quickly setting her back down in a panic. "Is that safe? Should I not do that?" Catherine laughed. "I'm pregnant, not fragile." Isaac touched her stomach with reverence. "Our family." "Our family," she whispered. As the sun dipped behind the hills, Catherine looked out at the land, the man beside her, and the future growing inside her. Her husband had taken another bride, but the cowboy had taken his greatest loss and turned it into Catherine's greatest gift. A new beginning, a new love, a new life.